Minnesota's widening Minnesota fraud scandal. You will not believe all of this. It comes as the feds say the sheer scale of the fraud is nothing short of epic.
Minnesotans and taxpayers deserve to know the truth of the fraud. The fraud is not small. It isn't isolated. The magnitude cannot be overstated. What we see in Minnesota is not a handful of bad actors committing crimes. It's a staggering industrial scale fraud. It's swamping Minnesota and calling into question everything we know about our state.
Mike Tobin has more from our Midwest Bureau. And Mike, I got to tell you, last night in a commercial break of the 5, we were all talking about this and really blown away by the numbers.
You know, the federal prosecutors, Dana, in Minnesota have been warning and still warning that we're looking at the tip of the iceberg in terms of the extent of this fraud in Minnesota. As you mentioned, 6 new indictments and 1 guilty plea were announced yesterday as federal agents executed a search warrant on Ultimate Home Health Services, a Somali-owned home care agency. The new indictment zeroes in on the autism program called Early Intensive Developmental and Behavioral Intervention, or EIDBI, and zeroed in on housing stabilization programs. In the case of the housing stabilization programs, the Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson says defendants claim to provide housing assistance to people with mental illness or drug and alcohol problems, and they say the defendants submitted claims, provided no service. Thompson used the term fraud tourism, claiming she went from Philadelphia, learned there was easy money in Minnesota, so they flew into the state, set up shop, and started billing the government. As far as defrauding the autism programs, Thompson introduced one new case of a defendant recruiting parents, getting bogus documents for a diagnosis of autism for the child. The parents would then get a kickback from the money intended to treat the autistic child.
What we're seeing is programs that are just entirely fraudulent. These aren't companies that are providing some services but overbilling Medicare or Medicaid. These are companies that are providing essentially no services. They're essentially shell companies created to defraud the program, created to submit on a wholesale level.
Now, the housing stabilization program, for one, was created with a prediction it would cost $2.6 million annually. It ballooned to $21 million in 2021 and exploded to $104 million in 2024. All but a handful of the defendants thus far are part of the Minnesota Somali community. Some of the money did leave the U.S. There were real estate purchases in Kenya, to give you one example. But prosecutors say so far they have no evidence that the money funded the terror group Al-Shabaab. Dana?
All right, Mike Tobin, thank you.
So it just gets deeper. Liz Collin knows it all too well. Alpha News journalist based in Minnesota. Liz, welcome to our program here. 2 guys from Philadelphia go to Minnesota to pick up cash. Was this an open secret in your state?
Bill, we've been reporting on this for years and hearing that the fraud is well into the billions of dollars in Minnesota. I don't think really surprises anyone here. There was this warning months ago that an iceberg was ahead by First Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson. Seems like we're not even hitting that just yet. I'll be honest. We've visited some recent sites just within the last week. Still, it seems, fraudulent programs everywhere. Zeroing in on those 14 Medicaid programs that have now been flagged, $18 billion that poured into those programs since 2018. Yesterday, we heard more than half of that is likely fraud, perhaps well above $9 or $10 billion. But just seeing that explosive growth, I think you can see these businesses everywhere. In fact, business owners in Minnesota are even taking matters into their own hands, Bill. We've done some stories about people actually setting up security cameras, rolling on neighboring businesses saying, hey, there's no kids coming and going from this daycare. There are no adults going in and out of this adult daycare. Will someone do something?
Yeah, that's why I asked. I thought it was an open secret there. Listen, let's show our viewers a second here what they were intended for, all right? Feeding children. That's one. Helping recovering addicts find a place to live. Helping disabled adults live independently. One-on-one therapy for autistic children. All those things are so important. And this is where they went. Wire transfers to China and East Asia. Villas in the Maldives. First-class plane tickets to Istanbul and Amsterdam. Stacks of cash texted between defendants, luxury vehicles, lakefront property in Minnesota, designer jewelry, on it goes. Here is the governor now, Tim Walz, from about 10 days ago. This is what he said then.
We will continue to take and tackle the issue of fraud, of people defrauding the people of Minnesota and the state of Minnesota. We know now that those programs have been paused. We have an independent auditor from the outside. We've enacted new powers that we have to stop payments and to be able to make sure that that snapshot of what's there is. The people who did it will go to prison.
Okay, Liz, based on what you can see and based on what you can report, how seriously is he taking this?
You know, it's interesting. He's made quite a few maneuvers that are questionable, I would say, over these last years. Now appointing, I should say, a fraud czar, but he closed at the statewide level an office that investigated fraud for many years. There are questions about that. This has only renewed the call for Governor Tim Walz to resign. He is currently running for a third term as governor, but this has really ramped up under his watch. The last 7 years, all of this fraud exploding onto the national scene. I think it's 5 or 6 federal investigations that have now been announced in Minnesota, from SNAP or welfare fraud. The state doesn't want to give that over. Our voter rolls, Minnesota doesn't want to hand that over to the feds. Illegal immigrants having commercial driver's licenses here. In fact, President Trump saying that Walz has turned Minnesota into a fraudulent hub of money laundering activity. Those are the president's words.
So I was just watching this from New York. The one thing I keep coming back to is that I heard one of the experts from Minnesota say, you can't win a statewide race in Minnesota unless you have the Somali community behind you. Is that true?
You know, it's certainly a voting bloc for Democrats. It's about 100,000 or so people that are here, Somalis in Minnesota. You know, in a state of about 6 million. But you certainly see a lot of pandering to that community as well. I think it's about 90% of the people that have been charged in these frauds are Somali. But you certainly see that they are needed for the Democrats.
That's one thing. We just heard the agent from Mike Tobin's reporting there. That calls into question everything we know about the state. I bet it does. Liz, more to come on this. Thank you for coming on and keep reporting it. We'll follow it. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Bill.